Hi everybody, welcome to Social Studies. Today we're going to be looking at the answers to the questions on page 15 that I gave you for homework before we went back onto online classes. And then there's some work to do at the end. Make sure you play the video to the end and that will tell you what to do today. Question 1 said, why did farmers not prosper during the boom period? Prosper means to do well. Well, farmers bought new machines to increase their efficiency. That meant that they could grow more things at the same time. But these machines were expensive, so they had to use credit. They had to borrow money to buy the machines, thinking that when they grew more crops, they could pay the money back. But many farmers grew a lot extra, and so the market became saturated. Saturated means that there was too much of it in the market. There was too much and not enough customers. If all of the farmers started to grow more, there weren't more people living in America, so there were not more people wanting to eat. So some of the farmers would not be able to sell what they grew because the supply was too much. And when the supply is too much, when you are competing to sell, then you have to lower your price. So the price of food went down. Also, the machines did the job of the farm workers, so many people lost their jobs and had to move to the cities to try and find new work in manufacturing, in the factories. I should have said, as you were going through these slides, if there's any information here that you didn't include in your own answer, feel free to pause the video and copy down any extra information. So question 2 said, compare the lives of bricklayers and coal mine workers. How are they similar? Well, they're both doing manual jobs. Manual jobs are jobs that you need to use your muscles for, jobs that take strength and hard work. And neither of them needed a lot of skill or training. For digging the coal out of the ground or carrying the bricks and mixing the cement, the people didn't need to go to school. They were quite basic, quite low jobs. How are they different? Well, the bricklayers got a lot more money. $320 per month compared to $103. Bricklayers were also more in demand because the cities were expanding. Every time factory owners wanted to expand their factory, they needed construction workers, they needed bricklayers. Every time more people moved to the city, people need to build more housing. So bricklayers were in demand. And in contrast, coal miners were not in demand. People were moving away from coal. They thought burning coal was dirty. They wanted cleaner fuels like natural gas. I suppose if you think about cooking in the kitchen, when you burn the charcoal or the wood, you get a lot of black smoke. There are other ways to get energy that does not make a lot of pollution. So people were moving away from the dirty coal, so they needed less coal miners. Question 3. Do you think that the technological advance was beneficial to Americans? Now, when you get something like this, you can show both sides. Beneficial in some ways, but no, it was not beneficial because of other things. And you can draw on the ideas for everything that we've looked at so far in social studies this year. So you could say, yes, the technology was very useful because technology made work easier. The machines did a lot of the work that people were doing before, so it was easier for work to be done. Also, it made it possible to make many things at the same time. Think about the car factory. Many cars were made at the same time, so the machines allowed more things to be made and it allowed the price of manufacturing to be reduced. Technology also made life at home easier. There was a refrigerator, so people didn't need to go to the shop as often. There were vacuum cleaners to clean the house. There were cars to make transportation easier. So technology was good for Americans in many ways. But in some ways, It was bad because people lost their jobs. If you have machines doing the work, you need less workers on the farms and in the factories. Think about weaving, think about making clothing. You know, in your current villages, when you weave by hand, you need many people to be weaving because it's a very slow process. But in a factory, when a machine is making clothing, you don't need as many workers. Also, the workers that are there, their jobs can be quite boring. They can be repetitive, doing the same thing over and over again. So, people might not like those kind of jobs. They are unskilled. Before machines, to make a car, you would have to be very skilled. You'd need to know every part of the process. It would be interesting, it would be challenging. You'd be using your brain a lot. But after factories expanded and started to use machines, the jobs were simplified. Everybody was on the production line, which would be good for helping more people get the job, but not so good because the jobs were less stimulating, less interesting. Question 4. How was America traditionally seen? Well, it was a melting pot. Remember the image of a melting pot, like when you're making a soup and you leave everything in the pan for many hours. Slowly, all the different types of vegetables, the molau, the pumpkin, the alu, it all melts together. It all dissolves into a very thick liquid. It all becomes the same. Well, that's the idea of America. They had lots of different cultures, different religions, different ethnicities, people coming from all around the world to live in America, but they became American. They didn't keep their old identity. They took their new identity of American. They wore American clothing. They used American language. They had American habits, lifestyles, hobbies. They became American. And it was also seen as this land of opportunity, where if you worked hard, you would get rich. So many poor people from Europe, especially from places like Ireland, they went to live in America, hoping to make their fortunes, hoping to get rich. Question 5. What percentage of people in America lived in extreme poverty, below the breadline? Now, the breadline, if you remember, means the breadline is where you have enough money. If you are below the breadline, you do not have enough money to buy the basic things that you need. Imagine not having enough money to buy rice for everybody in your house. That's kind of the idea. Bread was a basic food in America. If you did not have enough money to buy bread for everybody in your house, then you were very poor. So you'd have to choose. Do you pay your rent to stay somewhere? Or do you buy food? Do you buy electricity to keep you warm? Or do you eat? Now, when the temperature is very cold in America, maybe it's snowing outside, there's ice on the ground, electricity to keep your house warm is very important. You could freeze to death in the night if not. So people below the breadline did not have enough money to pay for everything that was essential for their daily life. And the passage told you 42% of Americans were in poverty. They didn't have enough money for all of their food, housing, and basic needs. Was America the land of opportunity that immigrants imagine it to be? Well, again, this is one of those questions where you can say yes and no. Yes, it was in some ways. No, it was not in other ways. So people that went to America got jobs and became rich for some people. Some people became very rich. They got very lucky. They might have had an idea that nobody else had, and they could start their own business and start selling things. People like Andrew Carnegie worked his way up from a very low position with no education to a very high position, owning companies and being a millionaire, becoming one of the richest men in America. So for some people, yes, it really was a land of opportunity. But for many people, they could not earn enough money to survive. Many people struggled to get a good job. They had to work 7 days a week, 12 or 14 or even 15 hours a day just to earn enough money to put food on the table for their families. And there was also a lot of discrimination and racism. There was a lot of discrimination against people that were new immigrants, people that were Irish or Italian, and against black people from the South. So, in some ways, it was a land of opportunity, but you had to be lucky. In other ways, it was always a land of discrimination. And how do you think about emigration to America today? Emigration meaning leaving your home place and going to live there. And many of your friends will have done that. They'll have gone from Baclaw or Ampium and they went to live in America as refugees. Some of them may have come back to Karen State. I know some of my old students hated it in America and they came back. Others, they really love it in America. They get many opportunities. But it's true that racism still exists. If you watch the news right now, you will see many protests in America, a lot of problems between the African Americans and the white. The African Americans never really got equality. Go and Google Black Lives Matter or Portland protests, and you'll see some of the pictures and some of the stories of things that are happening in America right now. Even 4 years after America had their first black president, they're still facing discrimination. Black people are more likely to be stopped and searched by the police. If black people are found guilty in a court, they are more likely to be sent to prison than white people. Black children are more likely to drop out of school and not finish their education. Black people are more likely to get a low-paid job than white people. There is still a lot of inequality in America today. So go and do some research. Now, for today, I want you to complete page 16 to 18. This is all reading practice, but the passages are all about the topics that we've been studying. There are 12 questions. I think you should aim to spend no more than 30 minutes. 25 minutes is good, but 30 minutes is okay as you're still learning these reading skills. The explanations will be up later in the week.